Today, we're going to be comparing the cameras on the Galaxy S23 Ultra versus the Vivo X90 Pro Plus. Now, the Vivo can record 1080p with the front-facing camera and 4K on the Samsung, but I think personally the weakest camera on the Vivo is the front-facing camera. But anyways, I do have a free day here in San Diego, so I'm going to head out and try to see what I can get with these two phones. Alright, let's get this one out the way. They both can do 8K 30. Galaxy is clearly winning in terms of the stabilization since you can actually, or it's more usable, whereas Vivo, you don't really want to like run around, run and gun shoot with this. It does have 2x though, so that may be more useful if you need to zoom, but I guess only if you have it on sticks. Now both of these phones, their cameras are really good, from ultra wide to 100x, so I'm just gonna go in that order throughout this video. Now sometimes there are things the Vivo does better consistently, but it's not all the time. Something like HDR, I do feel like Vivo does have or show better in the shadows. You can see more of that in there, whereas the Galaxy is very contrasty, or it does have a more darker image or darker look, but the highlights are still controlled pretty well. Personally, as a camera person, I do like the look of the Vivo just because of the bigger sensor look, meaning the background is more shallow. Now, when we go indoors, Vivo is very saturated, so that's one thing to know, but they do have this Zeiss natural mode you can turn on to tone down the saturation a bit. So if you're indoors, I would most likely turn this on because clearly looking at this picture with the plate, it's not supposed to be like orangey brown, whereas the Galaxy pretty much looks like it's white. But also the Galaxy phones are also known to have saturated pictures as well. So you do have an option to tone it down with the Vivo. So it's great to have that option, and going back and forth when you're turning it on, you can clearly see that it's much better than having it off indoors when you're taking pictures of food. But of course, that is all personal preference. If you like the way it is, then you can just leave it off and you don't have to touch that Zeiss button. I don't think anything that stands out to me that one is better than the other. Also, the white balancing can be a hit or miss. There are times where Vivo it shows that it's too warm. Sometimes the Galaxy shows it's too warm as well. So it all depends on where and when you take the picture. When you get up to the 30 to 100x, you do see minor differences between the two. I think that the Vivo looks a bit more natural, where it's kind of blurry and it doesn't show that there's any like processing or any sharpness added, whereas the Galaxy, you do see slightly bit of that. And since I've seen people doing the moon test, here's one, and clearly the Galaxy is exposing the moon very well, and you can see a lot more detail, especially at the 100x where you can see even more. For video in the wide lens, it does seem like the Vivo has a slightly cooler look. The Galaxy has more of like a nicer saturated look, a good balance to it. So for me, automatically, I do like the colors on a Galaxy more. And as you can tell, the Galaxy is faster at exposing the highlights and making everything look even faster. Whereas the Vivo, it would naturally just take more time for it to register. Shooting with the ultra wide angle lens, the stabilization is really good on both. Just walking with them kind of makes it look like I'm on a gimbal, especially if I'm going to do a little bit more post stabilization, then definitely people might even be confused that I'm using a gimbal. But anyways, both of these are really good. Again, it seems like I can see more in the shadows on the Vivo than a Galaxy, especially if you're looking at the bottles on the bottom or at the back shelf. There is this one con that I don't really like on the Vivo, is that when I'm taking pictures in low light or pretty much at nighttime, it does have like a processing time where you can't do anything after. You have to wait until it's done taking a picture. Whereas on a Galaxy, it's very quick and snappy compared to the Vivo. Shooting video in low light with the ultra wide, I'm gonna go with the Vivo just because I'm seeing less micro jitters. It looks clearer to me while still having good stabilization. For the wide angle lens, they both really look good. It depends on the color situation in which one you do like, but if you do have a good amount of lighting when you're in the city or like at a restaurant or something, they both look spot on. But there are times where the Galaxy do well, where it keeps everything well controlled, whereas on a Vivo, it seems like they brought up the brightness in the shadows where you can see more noise. So it depends on what you're shooting and the situation you're in again. Now moving on to portrait, Galaxy only have the option of 1x and 3x, whereas on a Vivo is 1x, 2x, and 3.5x. I am personally a fan of the 2x in portrait mode. 1x seems to be too wide, and 3x requires a lot of space to use, so it's not really ideal for indoors. throughout these portraits, it looks like the Galaxy has a bit more contrast, where the shadows on my face is darker, is a bit more crushed, whereas on a Vivo, the shadows aren't as strong, so you can see more of my face. Shooting with the 1X, I am standing pretty far away, whereas there are times where the Ultra doesn't capture me or doesn't see my cutout, whereas on a Vivo, it does. And when I'm taking these pictures, I always put it on a timer and go to my spot. A lot of the times, the Galaxy phones tend to miss focus. Even when I go back to the photos and tap edit to re-change the focus position, it still doesn't have me super sharp or clear. So from my personal experience, if you're using portrait mode, definitely have a person to help you take a photo if you want it to be the sharpest as possible. So that is the comparison between these two phones. Let me know what you guys think and which one you prefer. I also did a comparison with the S23 Ultra versus the iPhone 14 Pro, so head on over there and check that one out. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys later.